Hello again, everybody. Apologies for my technical gremlins today. Zoom doesn't seem to be playing very nice for some reason, which is helping me to be resilient about technology. So what I thought I'd do is just to make sure that you can understand some of the things I was going to talk about and to have something to take away. I thought I'd just spend a few minutes just recording this for you. I'll send it over to Serena and the team. Either they'll hopefully play it at the end of today's session, or if it's too late for that, then I'm sure they'll send it to you with the rest of the video, and I hope that's useful. We'll get around it that way. So just very briefly, my name's Darren Gough. I'm the founder of Island 23 Limited. I started off my career with Martin Lewis's Money Saving Expert community. We grew to about 1.8 million, and I've subsequently worked on the other side of the fence doing pretty much every job you can think about in online community, including strategy and finding and training community managers and all that good stuff. So the topic of today is resilience. Now, last year was self-care for Community Manager Advancement Day, and this year's resilience. I think the two things go together quite nicely, and I think they're really important for the future of our industry, because I think we tend to start from this point, which is that everything will be okay. I think communities, by their very nature, are open to change, very drastic change at times. But I think what tends to happen for communities, they tend to sit on the outskirts of the organisation itself. So choose your analogy. It doesn't really matter what it is, but in this case, I've chosen this lovely image of the organisation as the planet and the community as the satellite. But I think organisations tend to do one of several things. I think firstly, they've heard of community and they think that's great. Let's do a community. They usually put someone in charge that maybe hasn't done community before, or has done community but isn't really given the right resources to do it properly. And the community ends up kind of orbiting the main organisation. And of course, when you approach things in these ways, the community is set up to fail. It's not very resilient. So I think if we change our mindset into positioning the community, again, choose your analogy, the heartbeat of the organisation or the centre of the planet or whatever it might be, I think once organisations, and this can be in the public sector, private sector, NGOs, it doesn't really matter what type of community it is you're running, the community's value, I think, extends to all areas of the organisation. And when we reposition our thinking into putting the community at the centre of that, I think the resilience path changes quite drastically. I think we're going to see that as a result of things that have happened with COVID as well, as the world transitions to digital workplace. The reason I think resilience is really important is when I started my career at Money Saving Expert, it became really apparent to me that community managers wear a number of hats. I started my job when community management was either in its very infancy or really wasn't recognised as a profession. And it became really apparent to me that community managers, I think, tend to wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of things they have to do. Our communities run 24/7 a lot of the time, and often the training isn't given, or sometimes it's hard to know where to go to find that training. And in the case of some of our communities, we're dealing with quite high levels of members, post-CAUS threads, activities, whatever else it might be. So what tends to happen for a lot of community managers is there's a series of techno speak that the industry recognises. And I think these things are very common with community managers. So have a look through the descriptions here, but techno overload, techno invasion, techno complexity, techno insecurity, and uncertainty. Ultimately, what we're talking about here is ways that people are going to burn out, or at the very least not be able to do their job effectively. So that means that we need to be resilient as people. I've done a lot of work with the NHS Good Thinking programme, and we've run a series of workshops like this where we bring together some large brands to talk about some of the stresses and pain points that they're finding. And we found that the same types of themes happen all the time. I mentioned wearing too many hats, but people are increasingly in our profession feeling like they don't have the skills or they're not supported in the right way to make sure they can do their jobs effectively. Quite often they're overwhelmed by what happens on a daily basis. They don't feel that support's happening. And of course, it's very hard to be resilient as a person when you don't feel like you're getting the right tools you need to do your job. But I think a part of this comes back to also the evolution of the employee. So, as I said, we saw last year that COVID really changed the landscape in terms of organisations moving into digital workplace. And I think what it's done for communities, it's probably shifted our industry forward 5 to 10 years. It's moved our industry forward in 5 to 10 months in what would have taken 5 to 10 years to do before. That's probably true of a lot of industries. So now we have this very flexible approach. And of course, the community managers were probably fairly used to working in this way. But now we've got a lot of organisations that are not used to working in this way, that are putting pressures on their teams, are trying to evolve at the same time. The organisation as a whole perhaps is trying to evolve. And what it's doing is it's adding pressure onto the community managers as well, trying to do their job. And ultimately, I think what a big takeaway for me, if you take one thing away from this piece of the talk, is resilience for us is also about taking care of ourselves. So, we can talk about, and I know the other speakers, Ed and Abby, will talk a bit about the sort of organisational structure and the organisational challenges in a bit more depth than I've covered. But I think it's really important to recognise that for us as people, as community managers, resilience comes from the way that we take care of ourselves as well. So we like to run this series of questions to a lot of the workshops we conduct, and to ask the attendees how they feel about all the things that they do historically or have done, and the things they want to do in the future. Now, some of these seem pretty basic, so let's run through them. So talk about your feelings, keep active, eat well, drink sensibly. You can obviously read through the list here. But it's really obvious to us that when we're running communities in a 24/7 remote environment, in organisations that because of COVID, maybe not because of COVID, are trying to adapt at pace as well, those techno stresses, those burnouts, those feelings where you feel like you can't do things properly, they actually stem a lot of the time from taking care of ourselves. I think this is an area of community management that is still overlooked too much, the support we give our community managers. And I think there's things we can do for ourselves. We speak to community managers who sometimes have worked 10 to 12 hours straight, and they suddenly realise that they've maybe got up once to go to the bathroom, but they really haven't eaten. If they have, it's maybe something unhealthy they've taken upstairs. They've hardly drunk any water. Drink sensibly, I should point out here, it does mean water and not alcohol, although of course that can be an issue as well. So there are a series of things here I think we need to think about in terms of the way we do take care of ourselves. And when we talk about resilience, the first place to start is with yourself. Let's talk about the ways that we can be resilient and give ourselves the best chance to do our jobs. And I think it's also really important to care for others. This is point number 10. And also caring for others is finding places, and CMX London is a great example of this, but finding other places where people are asking similar questions to you. So, what are your challenges? Where are the pain points? Where are the stresses? Where sometimes you might just need someone to listen to you and just to say, I understand, I'm a community manager, I get it. You might need someone to remind you to take a break. When was the last time you drank a pint of water? When was the last time you did this? When was the last time you got outside and exercised? For too many of us, the week can fly past, and the desire, I think, to want to do those things that keep us grounded and keep us stable diminish. So I think there's quite a few things we can think about with resilience, but I want to really impress the value of investing in ourselves, to taking care of ourselves in an environment where we're already running against the challenges of the multiple hat wearing, the 24/7 activity in our communities, the not central alignment to the organisation. These are big challenges, but I think we can do things to help ourselves as well. When we talk about communities and what they do next, when we see problem issues in our communities, I think we need to be resilient in terms of the way we signpost. So quite often as community managers, we're not always set up to deal with some of these issues that we see. Some of them can be quite serious, like self-harm and suicide. I've certainly experienced that in my career of people posting these types of issues. Some can still be pleas for help, anxiety, stresses that you see with your members. So here's a model you can revisit after in terms of some guidance on how I think we can support that. I want to just mention Good Thinking before I finish my talk. A couple of resources here you can look at. So Good Thinking are a government programme that I've worked with for a few years now, aimed at helping the self-care and mental health of people in general, but they're also really interested in how we help digital professionals and online community managers to deal with their challenges. There are a series of tools on these websites. One that you might want to have a look at is the stress self-assessment, to have a look at what the recommendations are for you. It's all personal, without taking any personal details, but you'll get a personalised plan or a series of actionable ideas that you can look at as well. So that's it for me. It's quite a lot of information to get to in not a huge amount of time. So I hope at least I gave you some ideas to think about. Obviously, you can reach out to me through CMX or on LinkedIn if you want to have a conversation or want to find out a little bit more. And yeah, I just hope it really, really helps. Thank you very much.